I was coming home for Christmas after years of military service. I thought my family would be waiting with open arms, but I had no idea what was waiting for me instead. My name is Sophia, and from wherever you are watching this, stay with me. Before we continue, please write in the comments which country you're watching this video from. Enjoy the story. When I first enlisted, I knew it meant sacrifice. I missed birthdays, anniversaries, and countless ordinary days that most people take for granted. But the hardest part was always Christmas. The sound of carols over a crackly radio, the taste of bland rations when I knew the world outside was filled with cinnamon, cookies, and laughter. It cut deep. Every year, I promised myself that someday I'd be back home for the holidays, that I'd walk into the warmth of family and feel whole again. This year was supposed to be that moment. After years of service, after months of waiting for my leave to be approved, I finally had my chance. I booked the ticket home as soon as I could. I could already picture the house glowing with lights, the smell of roast turkey, the tree standing proud in the living room. I even imagined the sound of my sister's voice as we bickered over who got the last piece of pie. Those little, messy, ordinary things were what I had craved through years of uniforms, salutes, and cold nights on foreign soil. But even as I made those plans, something gnawed at me. My dad had grown quieter over the phone. He used to ask about my missions, my health, my thoughts on coming home. Lately, the conversations ended faster, with excuses about being busy. My sister, who once sent me funny texts to keep me smiling on long nights, barely replied anymore. When she did, it was dry, almost forced. At first, I told myself it was nothing. Life changes. People get caught up in their own routines. Still, I couldn't ignore the sting of distance that seemed to grow each day. I brushed it off and buried myself in the excitement. I packed gifts carefully, things I'd bought overseas, trinkets and small luxuries that I thought would remind them of me, of the effort I put into every thought of them. I wanted to prove, in some small way, that even when I was far away, they were always with me. Every night before my flight, I sat in my room and imagined walking through that door. I pictured my dad's face lighting up, my sister hugging me so tightly that I could hardly breathe, the way it used to be when we were children. I convinced myself that whatever coldness I had felt would melt away the moment I came home. I thought love was enough to bridge the silence, enough to make up for the years I had missed. I believed that when I finally came back, all the sacrifices I made would matter. I didn't know then that love alone wasn't going to save me from what was coming. Just days before Christmas, when my bags were already packed and my heart was counting down the hours, the message came. It wasn't a warm call from my dad, no excited, "can't wait to see you," no reminder of what food I'd find waiting on the table. It was a short, cold text message. "Don't come. Plans have changed. The house is too full." I must have read it a dozen times, my eyes burning, my hands trembling. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe he meant something else. Maybe he was stressed. Or maybe his phone auto-corrected into something cruel. But the words stayed the same, clear and sharp as a knife. "Don't come." It was like the air was ripped out of my lungs. After years of waiting for this one chance, after sleepless nights imagining my family's arms around me, this was what I got: a dismissal, an order to stay away. My mind spun in disbelief. Too full? What did that even mean? Was there no chair at the table for me? No space on the couch? No corner in the house where I belonged? I thought of the endless nights I had spent overseas, clutching onto the thought of home like it was the only thing keeping me alive. And now, when I was finally ready to come back, they were telling me not to. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the gifts I had packed so carefully. Each one had meaning. A scarf for my dad, woven by a kind woman I met during deployment. A bracelet for my sister, delicate and colorful, something I thought would make her smile. Suddenly, they all looked pointless. Why had I carried them? Why had I cared so much when they couldn't even care enough to want me home? The betrayal sank in, deeper, with every passing hour. My dad didn't call to explain, didn't offer a single word of comfort, just silence after the blow. I replayed all the sacrifices I had made, the Christmas mornings spent in bunkers, the holidays where I toasted with strangers instead of family, the birthdays where I sang quietly to myself because no one was there to remember. I thought all of that had been for something, for us, for the family I was fighting for. But to them, it seemed I was nothing but an afterthought. And then came the worst part. Through a mutual friend, I learned the truth. The house wasn't too full. The plans hadn't changed. They were hosting Christmas all right, but just not for me. My sister and her fiancé were coming, his family too. The table would be crowded with laughter, the tree surrounded with gifts, the rooms filled with warmth. And I wasn't part of it. I wasn't excluded because there wasn't space. I was excluded because they chose to leave me out. The pain was almost unbearable. It wasn't just about missing another holiday, it was about realizing that my place in their hearts had been replaced. My sacrifices, my service, my love meant less to them than the convenience of entertaining guests. That night I lay awake, the text glowing in my mind like a wound that wouldn't close. I thought I had known betrayal before, but this was a whole new kind of heartbreak. I stared at that. Message until the letters blurred, but anger slowly started to rise through the cracks in my heartbreak. I had spent years believing that one day my family would finally see me, finally honor the sacrifices I made. But now, sitting in my tiny rented room with half-packed bags, I realized that maybe they never would. For the first time, I started asking myself questions I'd never dared to before. Why did my dad always put my sister first? Why did she always get a pass while I was treated like an outsider? I thought about all the phone calls where she talked about her life while my dad listened with pride, and when it was my turn, he would rush me off with, "That's nice, Soph. Stay safe out there." I told myself it didn't matter then, but now it felt like the puzzle pieces were clicking into place, and the picture wasn't pretty. I began going through old texts, old emails, anything that could explain why I was being cut out. That's when I found it. Messages from months back where my dad had talked about making the holidays special for my sister and her fiancé. He had planned this for a while. I wasn't just forgotten, I was deliberately left out. The anger simmered into a kind of quiet determination. I wasn't going to let this destroy me. If they thought I'd just curl up in my uniform, cry, and fade into the background, they were wrong. I started pulling out all the evidence of my sacrifices, letters from commanders, medals packed away, photos of deployments, even the bruised notebooks where I scribbled my fears when the nights were too long and too cold. These weren't just reminders for me, they were proof that I mattered, proof that I had given more than anyone at that Christmas table ever would. But I wasn't just looking for proof, I was looking for strength. Each document, each memory, each scar reminded me that I had survived worse than this. Bombings, nights of silence so heavy it felt like the world had ended. Watching friends not make it home. Compared to that, a cold text from my father couldn't break me. Still, the betrayal cut deeper with each memory. I thought of the Christmas mornings when I'd call home from the other side of the world, my voice shaky with bad reception, hoping to hear joy on the other end. Instead, my dad always sounded distracted, like I had interrupted something more important. I used to brush it off. But now I knew. Maybe I was never the priority. In those sleepless nights, the resentment grew alongside my resolve. I began to imagine walking into that house unannounced, my uniform pressed, my head held high, watching the shock on their faces as they realized they couldn't erase me. I imagined the silence falling over their laughter as I reminded them exactly who they had chosen to abandon. The thought gave me power. A plan began to form, not out of revenge, but out of survival. If they wanted to act like I didn't exist, I'd show them just how wrong they were. And for once, I wasn't going to stay quiet. I didn't want to spend Christmas curled up in that tiny room staring at the ceiling, replaying my father's cold words until they hollowed me out. I needed to breathe, to remind myself that I wasn't alone. So I reached out. There were other veterans in town, men and women who knew what it meant to give everything and get little back. People who had walked the same lonely nights, felt the same sting of distance, and carried the same invisible weight. We decided to meet up on Christmas Eve. Nothing fancy, just a few of us gathering in a borrowed hall with mismatched chairs and plastic plates. But the moment I stepped into that room, I felt something my own family had denied me: belonging. There were hugs, pats on the back, and genuine smiles that didn't come with conditions. For once, I wasn't the forgotten daughter or the soldier who left. I was just Sophia. The meal wasn't extravagant. Some donated turkey, trays of mashed potatoes, and a few pies from local bakeries. But when we sat around that table, laughter filling the air, stories bouncing from one end of the room to the other, it felt warmer than any Christmas I had ever known. One veteran told us about the year he spent Christmas on patrol, counting stars over desert skies. Another shared how he had mailed himself a single candy cane to make the season bearable. We laughed, we cried, and we remembered. I shared my own story, too. The empty Christmas calls, the letter from my dad telling me not to come, the way it all cut me to the bone. And instead of being dismissed or told to get over it, they listened. They really listened. One woman leaned over, squeezed my hand, and said softly, "Sophia, sometimes the blood that runs through your veins doesn't matter. What matters is who shows up for you." Her words sank deep. Meanwhile, my phone buzzed every few hours with notifications. Photos were flooding social media, my sister's perfect Christmas, lights strung across the house, a long table covered with food, everyone dressed in matching sweaters, smiling for the camera. For a second, it stung. That was supposed to be me in those photos. That was supposed to be my seat at the table. But as I stared at the screen, something shifted inside me. The smiles looked rehearsed. The warmth felt staged. It wasn't real. And for the first time, I realized I wasn't the one who had lost anything. They had, because while they posed for pictures, I was sitting among people who had stared death in the face and still found reasons to laugh. I was surrounded by authenticity, by resilience, by true family. They had turned me away, but in that rejection, I had stumbled into something stronger, something unbreakable. That night, when I walked back to my room, the winter air biting at my cheeks, I felt a quiet strength humming in my chest. The rejection still hurt, but it no longer defined me. My father and sister could stage their perfect little Christmas all they wanted, but I knew the truth. Family isn't always the people who share your blood. Sometimes it's the people who share your battles, your scars, and your hope. And in that truth, I finally started to heal. A few weeks after Christmas, life had settled into a quieter rhythm. I was back to my routine, but something inside me had changed. I wasn't drowning anymore. I wasn't replaying my father's cruel message over and over in my head. Instead, I carried with me the warmth of that night with the veterans, the laughter, the stories, the reminder that I wasn't invisible. Then something unexpected happened. My story started to spread. At first, it was just whispers among friends of friends. Someone who had been at the veterans gathering told a neighbor. That neighbor shared it with their church. Soon I was walking down the street and people I didn't even know were stopping me. They'd smile, shake my hand, and say, "Thank you for your service. We heard what happened. You deserved better." Every thank you felt like a piece of the broken puzzle inside me clicking back into place. For years, I had sacrificed in silence, missing birthdays, holidays, weddings, yet my own family brushed me off like I didn't matter. And now, strangers, complete strangers, were showing me the respect my own blood had denied me. But it didn't stop there. Questions started reaching my family. The same people who praised my sister's perfect Christmas were now whispering behind their backs. Why wasn't Sophia invited home? Why would a father push away his own daughter who had given years of service? My sister's smiles in her pictures suddenly looked forced. My dad, who had always been so proud of keeping up appearances, avoided eye contact when he ran into neighbors. I never shouted at them. I never posted anything online to call them out. I didn't need to. The truth had a way of finding its way into the light. Their silence was loud enough. And while they squirmed under the weight of questions they couldn't answer, I carried myself with quiet dignity. It was bittersweet justice. I won't lie. Part of me wanted to scream at them, to make them feel the sting of every lonely Christmas I endured. But another part of me realized I didn't have to lower myself to that. Sometimes, the greatest revenge isn't slamming doors or throwing accusations. Sometimes it's simply living in a way that shows you never needed them to begin with. I found my real family in unexpected places. In the veterans who sat across from me and understood my silence, in the strangers who stopped me on the street with gratitude in their eyes, in the community that chose to see me even when my own blood chose not to. And that's the truth I carry now. I don't beg for a seat at their table anymore. I don't ache to be included in their staged photos. They lost me when they chose appearances over love. And I found myself when I stopped chasing their approval. So I stand taller now. I walk into each day knowing my worth isn't tied to whether my dad welcomes me home or my sister smiles at me across a table. My worth is in the sacrifices I made, in the resilience I carry, and in the family I built outside those walls. And in the end, that's what set me free.